I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask Mr. Coley to please call the roll.
Commissioner Cannell.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Here.
Commissioner Herbert.
Here.
Commissioner Robinson.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll just
you
get
have,
left out.
That's cool. That made me pretty nervous to be first.
Our minutes have been forwarded to us from our last meeting. Would ask for if there's any questions about it. If not, there's a motion to approve those.
So moved.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First order of business is Resolution 1288, adopting an annual certification of ethics compliance for board members of the KUB. We talked about this a little bit last time.
Commissioners, I'll remind you that this board has had a strong position for a long time with regard to ethics and conflict of interest with regard to the board itself as well as all of our employees. This is just an additional component of that, and I'll recognize Betsy Ford to summarize it for you.
Like Ms. Roach said, you had a long-standing commitment to ethics dating back to 1939 when the board's very first resolution adopted or resolved to operate the board in a non-political manner. And that commitment has continued throughout the years, as you can see here. In 2005, KUB actually established an employee policy to help employees raise awareness and understand their obligation to our customers in terms of operating in a conflict-free manner. In 2007, the board adopted an ethics policy pursuant to state law that required governing bodies of municipal agencies like ours to adopt ethical standards. That policy does provide that you're to recuse yourselves in voting matters if you do have a personal conflict with the matter that comes before you. And that has been exercised in the past by commissioners, specifically with condemnation resolutions where there's been a personal interest in a piece of property that's been on a list requesting condemnation of the levy. The ethics policy, however, is silent with respect to conflicts of interest in non-voting matters. And so this resolution is proposing that each commissioner sign a disclosure form and certify compliance with the ethical standards that have been established by formerly established governing documents of the board as well as statutes and law. In summary, Resolution 1288 requests adoption of a practice to sign an annual disclosure and certification form and requires KUB to keep those signed forms on file and would be effective immediately if passed. Any questions?
No, I move approval.
Second. Is there any other discussion, any other questions? I think it's an appropriate thing for us to be consistent with this. If not, Mr. Coley, will you call the roll call vote?
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell.
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
And Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Resolution 1288 is passed unanimously.
We'll, I guess that we know this, but maybe we all don't. Is there an opportunity maybe where we could, especially Kathy Celeste, get a little refresher about things we may not, I think we know the bigger picture, but the more subtle things that we might need to be watching out for.
Sure,
in
we
this ethics policy.
We can do that, and frankly, employees have an annual requirement to go through conflict of interest training. So maybe annually, we could do some small briefing on it to remind them of the components.
So what we just added is what the employees already have, we just added more for the commissioners.
And one of the things we did last year in the audit committee is we requested sure that we were all in compliance on the board. And so we may get a call this year when they do the audit from, you know, as it relates to, it may not, but that's something that they're gonna be considering when they do their examination.
It came up, as you know, we have an outside firm that helps us with our risk assessment, and then we do a 3-year plan. It came up in their discussion that some municipal public agencies are having risk associated with leadership and conflicts and those sorts of things. So that kind of led to a more extensive review of our policies. And the only thing that this board was lacking from our perspective as it related to state law and the practices we have with employees was this annual disclosure. So it's added, and now it applies to all employees as well as board members.
So did this come out of the audit that we had, or?
I would tell you the genesis of it came out of some public occasions that came up in the audit committee discussion, that came up in the review by the external auditors, that then we said, well, let's make sure we've got every T crossed. I mean, not that there were any issues or concerns or problems, no, not at all. Just let's do this final annual disclosure. Everyone understands when they get sworn in what the conflicts of interest and disclosures are, but then 7 years passes. So this makes sure that we get reminded of that every year. So.
Good. Nice robust discussion after we pass the resolution. Okay, that is the only official action, and then I'll recognize Ms. Roach for President's report.
Commissioners, we're proud to say that the Lions View project is moving right along. We have completed our public input process, and I'll recognize Julie Childers, who will summarize that as well as tell you how and when the project is going to get started.
Good afternoon. You all may recall last month we talked about the project in detail, what was coming up, and we've had a few updates since then. There's been a lot of activity on this project in the last month. One thing to note is the phase 1 that was going from the Fourth Creek wastewater treatment plant up to Lions Point Lane is now complete. We finished a little bit of cleanup now, but that project is in the ground. Another thing to note is we have identified a staging area just outside of the project area. We were very fortunate in that the City of Knoxville Parks Department and the Lakeshore Park Board agreed to let us use a piece of that property. So one of the first things you'll see going up once construction gets started is the construction of that staging area. There are some wrought iron fence panels that will be coming down, and a construction entrance will be constructed directly onto Lions View Pike. That will allow the contractor to have close access to the work and not have to use very much the public roads and not have to use the road that comes out of the park entrance. So that was very fortunate for us. Another item that I want to point out is up at the east end of the project, there's one section where we're doing sewer force main only. And that is where we're actually going to start this coming weekend. This is with another contractor. It's just a quick bid to get this part done ahead of the main construction, and so that we're not, distracted with that when we get ready to start in Lions View Pike itself. And I'll talk more about that here in a minute. We had the opportunity to collect a lot of public input over the last month. We did have our public meeting was in January 24th, and then after that we sent out surveys to all the residents to get their input on how we should construct the contract. A lot of things we found out were included the fact that they'd rather us start in April rather than May. They'd rather us work longer hours during the daylight as much as possible, so that may go as much as 14 hours when we get to the summertime. They prefer that we work 7 days a week as opposed to our normal 5 days a week. And the early response on underground electric was somewhat mixed. The most common response was, yes, it would be nice, but it depends upon the cost, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. We were asked to consider the possibility of sidewalks and bike lanes, but the overwhelming response was, please get finished as quickly as you can. And so that was one of our overriding considerations. The businesses on the east end preferred that we go first with them, and the park on the west end preferred that we go last. And so that worked out that we could accommodate both of those requests. As I mentioned, that little section of sewer force main only near Old Kingston Pike is going to be started this coming week. The businesses preferred that we start in Old Kingston Pike on a Sunday when all those businesses are closed. And they also asked that we work during spring break for UT. And so that will be starting this Sunday coming up and extending through Thursday. And it will end short of Lions View Pike at the top of that alley next to the beer garden. We've had the opportunity to communicate with customers through a lot of different routes, and that will continue during the construction phase. Of course, we've sent out letters through the mail. We also have a blog that's been set up, and we do periodically update that. It will be updated whenever there's a change in the construction that people need to know about, probably around weekly or so. We are also asking for emails from anyone who wants to receive information by email. And tonight we're having a public meeting, and we'll ask for additional email addresses if people wish to share those with us. There's also a project hotline, and that will have recorded information that people can call in and get over the phone, and they can also leave a message. And our customer support people will monitor that and then be able to respond within a business day back to them with their questions. One thing you'll be seeing probably around the 1st of April is electronic message boards going up. And there are several that are coming into the general vicinity. As you're coming westbound on Kingston Pike around Sequoia Hills, there'll be a message board saying Lions View Pike to be closed, and they'll get the message on the date. Also southbound on North Shore coming from the interstate, northbound on North Shore coming from the Lions Bend area, and then eastbound on Westland. So there'll be several advance notifications so that people can plan their routes when it comes time to close down Lions View Pike. Of course, we will have a couple of dedicated customer support individuals who are very experienced. Who will be available on site to help resolve any issues that occur during construction. Right now, we are projecting to close the road and begin work on April 15th. And we will have uniformed officers will be at the barricades, the east end and the west end, basically 24/7. And that will allow the officers to be able to screen cars if they come up and decide about access. Of course, access for emergency vehicles will be maintained at all times. And then we also have a KB hang tag, and these have already been printed, and this is what they look like. We're going to be mailing 2 copies of these to the homeowners this coming week. And if they need more than that, if they need hang tags for workers who come to their house or have additional vehicles, then we'll get those to them through our customer support staff. The Cherokee Country Club has taken the lead on creating their own hang tags for their members and also providing identification for people who are coming for a special event. So we appreciate their cooperation there. Any other drivers that come up and need to visit someone on the street can stop and talk to the officer. He will have a list of all the addresses, and he'll know if it's possible to access that property from where they're located, or if the property is beyond the construction zone and they need to go around Kingston Pike and come into a different way. I wanted to review some of the project activities that have happened over the last 6 weeks or so. We did advertise for bids on February the 12th, and then a week later we had a mandatory pre-bid meeting for all contractors that might be interested. At the end of February, we communicated with the businesses around Old Kingston Pike. That included the beer garden and Ashes and several other businesses to find out what their preferences were on that short section. Then in early March, we received a report from the city's traffic consultant that addressed the idea of expanding lanes and creating an area for a bike path or a sidewalk. What that study showed was that it really was not feasible. The right-of-way is too narrow and there are too many fixed objects in the way, including rock walls and landscaping, trees, and the like. Another major issue that they identified is the problem with driveways. If you widen Lions View Pike out, you have driveways coming from the high side that would need to become steeper in order to match the new edge of pavement, and the same thing on the low end, coming up from the low side. They would have to be steeper coming into Lions View Pike. So combination of factors led to them recommending not to do the bike lanes. About a week later, we received approval from the parks to be able to use that area for staging, which allowed us to get that information to the bidders before bids opened the next day. A few days later, on March 15th, we did select our contractor. The successful bidder was Charles Blaylock and Sons. They were the lowest price out of all 3 bids that we received, but they also had a lot of other good attributes. They had a very strong pipeline subcontractor that will be working with them. They also had an excellent safety record, which is of course very important to KUB, and they're really well known for their roadway reconstruction. In fact, they were responsible for the Smart Fix 40, which is certainly a very major roadway reconstruction project. And the superintendent they plan on using on our project is the same one that they had on Smart Fix 40. So very good experience level and, very large company that can address anything that comes up. We did find when we opened bids that the underground electric came in quite a bit higher than we expected. And so we went back to the public input that we got that indicated that people were interested, but it depended upon the cost. And so we found the cost came in higher than anticipated and higher than we had talked with them about. We decided to eliminate that part from the project. We have several upcoming activities. This evening, we have our second public meeting over at Bearden Elementary at 6 o'clock tonight. At that point, we'll have a presentation very similar to this one and give the public an opportunity to ask questions, to meet the contractor, meet our project manager, and also our customer support personnel. As I mentioned, this coming Sunday, the preliminary work will start down on Old Kingston Pike, and then on April 15th, we'll be ready to close the road and start construction. Weather permitting, if everything goes according to plan, then we will be finished before the Thanksgiving holidays. Are there any questions I can answer?
Yes. Is it too much to show that cost, that electric, what it might cost, or we don't need to do that?
Well, originally we thought it might be around 40,000 per parcel, which was high enough in itself. When we got the bids, it came out to be close to 55,000 per parcel, and it just really became cost prohibitive.
And I'll tell you, that was the low bid. The bids went up from there. And if you do the math, that's 50,000+ per parcel, and if a parcel chooses not to do it, then the rest of them have to, so that's the floor. The price would have been above that. And we didn't hear anybody in the public input process that inferred they would be willing to pay that much less a single, much less all of them. So we determined last Friday it just wasn't feasible to proceed with that.
The reason I actually came up at our homeowner association meeting when Liz was there.
Yeah, it's a very expensive, undergrounding conversion is a
Sure.
very expensive endeavor.
Sure.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Pat.
How do you put an incentive for the contractor to finish in a hurry?
Well, we didn't put a specific incentive in there, but we do have, a firm date for completion. And so, they're aware that they'll be held to that, and if they go over it for reasons that are not related to weather, then there are liquidated damages that are applied.
So that was my next question. How much can weather can affect this a lot?
It could, but,
Wet.
contractors do build into their schedule a certain amount of weather delay, and we're going into the best construction season we could be. During the summer, it should be drier. Of course, we'll have some rain showers and that kind of thing, but we're not going to be dealing with snow and ice, and so I think our timing is good on this.
Is there any, the east end that has some road access, I think that's Arrowhead, whatever goes down to Kingston Pike? It's one of the business owners asked me about if you finish that, would that be open at least up to those roads, or is there any reason to do that or not do that?
I think we can do that. That's one of the things we'll be talking to the contractor about, one of the more detailed things we'll need to talk to him about, but I don't really see a reason why that couldn't happen once we've finished up to that point and have the temporary pavement down.
But those roads
maybe Arrowhead, for example, it'll be closed. You can't access Lions View at all. It'll be closed. Somebody came up that street, they'd have to turn around and go back through Sequoia Hills somehow.
Yes, until we move the barricades, yes.
Unless they have a hang tag.
Must have, right, but if they live on
Just-
Arrowhead and they're coming out,
Yeah.
they have to go around.
Julie, on one of the bullets there said that the city was gonna handle the traffic. Is in their plan, I mean, where this is all gonna bottleneck is North Shore and Kingston Pike. And is there any talk that they would have uniform folks there help, I mean, at least initially? Because, I mean, it's gonna be a torture chamber right there.
It is gonna be difficult at first. I don't think they have plans to have uniformed officers, and I'm not sure that that would help. I think probably, what's gonna happen is people will realize what the situation is. A lot of people will see the advance signs, and they'll just take a different route home anyway. I think the first week or two, people will start to figure it out, and we'll find alternate routes, and the traffic will settle out.
Well, it might be worth looking into that, just if, for the first week or two, and on Friday afternoons, seeing if we could talk them into helping with that, because that line will be from Kingston Pike to Lions Bend, I'm sure. I mean, it nearly is now, and I don't know. They might help in the, depending on how much northwest traffic or north-south traffic there is, or east-west, if they could, let more traffic through.
We'll mention that to them. Tonight at the public meeting, we are having a representative from the city engineer who will be there to help with questions on that.
With regard to the staging area at Lake Shore Park, is that going to impact the walking trail there at Lake Shore in any way?
No. This is an area that's basically open. There are no trails there. There are a few small trees that we're going to have to take out, which we'll replace afterwards. But there shouldn't be any impact long-term beyond that.
Have we contacted, I know my kids do soccer there too, have we contacted LC Alliance and Crush and all of those teams to let them know that,
Not them specifically, but we have talked with, the Parks Board and,
so they
They're
probably,
handling that.
okay.
They're handling all the teams.
Is it unusual that we only had 3 bidders?
not really. It's a very specialized type of project. Not everyone can qualify for this because there were so many different utilities involved. So I was glad that we had 3, but I wasn't too surprised it was going to be that.
We had more show up to the pre-bid though, right?
There were a few others that showed up to the pre-bid,